Time for our weekly visit with our hockey insider, Pierre LeBrun. Pierre, you have reported that Team Canada brass has whittled their list of potential names for the men's Olympic hockey team down to 35 or 40 names. The names on everyone's mind in this country right now are the three players who are really lightening it up in the league right now. The three players, the three Canadians, Matthew Schaefer, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, lighting it up in the NHL. You told me a few weeks ago you thought Schaefer was a long shot. What about Celebrini and Bedard? What are the chances that both of them might end up on this team?
Well, listen, certainly they continue to improve. I just don't know if they'll run out of time or not. I mean, when the season started, I asked Team Canada GM Doug Armstrong about Celebrini and Bedard. I mean, after all, he invited them to the orientation camp in August. And he said he felt that both of them needed to pop, quote unquote, to really grab Team Canada's attention. And he figured they probably would. Well, he was right. It's exactly what both those kids have done here, a month and a half into the season. I think if Team Canada announced their roster tonight on your show, Jay.
Yep.
Can you imagine, by the way?
Gosh,
that would be fun.
Great. Yeah.
I think Celebrini would be on and Bedard would just be out. That's just my sense of where I think those conversations are within the Team Canada walls. And by the way, Team Canada, which met for 9 hours on Monday, trying to get that list down, which they did. Now, there's still time. And regardless of whether I'm right or wrong about that assertion with Bedard, there's still time for him, ample time for him to get on. I think the concern, for Team Canada, and they're not sharing this, but it's my sense, is that how many players can they have that have never been in that big game, in that big moment, on that big stage? And so, it might be unfair to some degree, but I always come back to the idea that maybe they can only take one of the two. We'll see. I could be wrong. I did ask specifically about Matthew Schaefer with Doug Armstrong when I had some time with him Monday. It's like I had Jay Onrait in the back of my mind. Ask about Schaefer. Ask about Schaefer. So I asked about Schaefer. And he said, listen, his exact words were, wow, what a fantastic show to watch this year is what Armstrong said about Schaefer. And his point was, here's a guy that wasn't even on their radar before the season because he had never played in the NHL, and now they've had to dispatch people to go watch him, to scout him. So he has gone up in the eyes of Team Canada. I still think, though, that he's 18, and Team Canada really likes a lot of their guys who played defense at Four Nations, and why wouldn't they? So the thing I keep coming back to, Jay, they're not starting with a blank canvas. They're taking the Four Nations roster and saying, who do we think we really got to take off? And philosophically, I think that's important to remember because it's not the same as starting from scratch.
That's a great point you make. You talked about Bedard and Celebrini popping. Leo Carlsson, talk about a player who's popped this season, Pierre. He's been incredible for Anaheim, as you know. So Bedard and Carlsson currently top 4 National Hockey League scoring. And lo and behold, they happen to be restricted free agents at the end of the year. Good for their representatives for sure, including Mr. Pat Brisson. Has there been any talk of extending either player at this point?
So, obviously different situations. Let's start with Carlsson since you mentioned him first. What I was told with him is that because he didn't have eye-popping numbers his first 2 years in the league. Remember, he did load management in his rookie year, which worked out great for him, but they brought him along slowly. But it meant, that the big numbers weren't there, but he steadily got better. His camp absolutely, I believe, wants to wait as long as possible, if not the entire season, before really diving into negotiations, because they wanted this to be the year where the breakthrough happened. And guess what? That's exactly what's happening. So there's no question in my mind that the Ducks would have loved to have got the ball rolling on this by now, but Leo Carlsson, his agent Matt Cater, I think they're just going to let the year play out here for a bit and get back to that later. Kind of similar with Connor Bedard. I mean, there were, in that case, I'd say there were more conversations between Bedard and the Blackhawks in the summer, Jay. There were some conceptual scenarios thrown around, some numbers attached, but at the end of the day, it was Bedard and his camp that said, you know what? let's just focus on me having a bounce back year. You know, Bedard wanted more from himself. The Blackhawks having a better year as a team. And we'll pick this conversation back up at some point in time. I'm not saying it has to be after the season. It could be as early as the new year, but both sides agree TBD on that conversation. And why not? If you're Bedard or Carlsson, nothing wrong is going to happen in terms of your value as you keep filling the net in the meantime.
Pierre, on Tuesday night, I referred to the Flames-Blues matchup as the battle for Gavin McKenna. The two teams with the two worst records in the league. Well, Calgary lost that battle, so Calgary has the worst record in the National Hockey League at 4-12-2. Are we getting close to the point, Pierre, where GM Craig Conroy might be looking to sell off some pieces?
Well, listen, we're getting close to the point where the Flames realize where this is headed, and it's a point of no return. I mean, it's just too hard to dig that much of a hole and come back to contention. But here's the thing, you know, Jay, I mean, and listen, and you asked an important question here with a Canadian team. What does selling parts look like for the Calgary Flames? 2 years ago, that was a different question. They had so many guys on expiring deals, as you remember, and they did start selling those guys off, you know, from Lindholm to Zadorov, etc. But in this case, this year, there's one notable pending UFA. It's Rasmus Andersson. We've done a lot of reporting on it. I mean, he is more than likely going to get dealt by March 6th. He turned down an extension from the Flames last summer. But after that, it's not really that obvious. Now, we've spent a lot of time wondering about Nazem Kadri's future. He's not a UFA. He's got more term left on his deal. But Darren Dreger had such an interesting update last week at Insider Trading when he said, you know, Flames ownership doesn't want Kadri traded. And so for the moment, that kind of pauses that speculation. You know, that could change, but that's where that is. Maybe teams start calling him Blake Coleman, who has a year and a half left on his deal. That's the kind of player that playoff teams actually love to pick up. You know, he's such a good leader, and his style is more adept to the playoffs, so that's possible. But overall, I think it's important to address the big picture here, Jay. I don't think, Murray Edwards, Flames ownership, they've never been interested in a full-fledged, completely, blow up the team, long-term rebuild. I truly believe, and someone told me this, that Murray Edwards doesn't see, he would be concerned about a Buffalo-like, going into the abyss if you can't get out of that rebuild, and in terms of culture and accepting the losing, etc. Now, obviously they're lost anyway right now, but the idea of purposely tanking, I don't think is part of the DNA for Flames ownership. And again, that might frustrate some people in their fan base who feel like the team is kind of stuck in no man's land. Almost made the playoffs last year for sure, but in general, not taking the big swing at a franchise player to rebuild. But that's just the way I think that Flames ownership feels. And so once you understand that, I just don't see the team completely, rehauling the roster. Changes coming, sure, but not rehauling the entire roster.
We will see if they continue to lose. Maybe they back themselves into Gavin McKenna, who played some of his junior hockey just down the road in Medicine Hat. This is Pierre LeBrun. This has been Right On, Right On.